I genuinely think that this is the absolute best rigging solution for the Lumix S5 II and the S5 IIX. So in today's video, I want to talk to you guys specifically about this rig that I have in my hands right now and why it's so much better than everything else that I've built in the past. So when it comes to rigging smaller mirrorless cameras, one of my biggest bugaboos is how many moving parts there are on those bigger sort of built cine rigs, if you like. So of course, when building out a rig, you have to think about external power. So that means like V-mount or something like that. And then in order to add that to your mirrorless camera, you need to have a V-mount plate. And then in order to attach that to the whole thing, you need rods and then your cage and then something to attach the cage to the rods and then the base plate. It just gets very, very messy. And also because it's so many different moving parts, it does mean that the rig can sometimes feel a little bit, I don't know, janky in the hands, as well as also looking quite janky as well. Now, this solution in front of me is from an Australian brand called Ridgid Pro. And essentially they've manufactured something that they're calling the Cine Rig Base. And essentially what it is two cheese plates, one at the top and one at the bottom, and then a sort of 3D printed element at the back with 4 DTAP inputs and then your V-mount plate, which means that essentially it's one unit that does everything that your rig would need to do, which makes it really, really nice and very, very easy. So the way you go ahead and attach your camera into this sort of Cine Rig base is via the use of either the SmallRig Black Mamba cage, that's the one they recommend on their website, or I have tested it and it does work with a tilter half cage as well. So what you do is essentially you slide your camera into the Cine Rig base, and then there'll be 2 connections at the top of your cage and then 2 connections at the bottom of your cage that you then use to basically screw the camera into the Cine base. And then that's basically it. Your camera is in and it feels super, super solid and very sturdy. And then, as I said earlier, there are 4 DTAP inputs on the base itself. So you can go ahead and power your external monitor with a DTAP to Sony NP style battery. That's what I'm using currently on my Atomos Ninja V. And then you can also power your camera as well. Now, Ridgid Pro actually sent me out the USB-C to DTAP cable, so I could go ahead and basically be trickle charging my camera while I'm using it, and that solution works really nicely actually, as opposed to using the dummy battery option. But there is a caveat to that. So the cable that they provide is actually a right angle USB-C type cable. So in order to get it to work with a tilter cage, because essentially it has to go down, not up, because if it goes up then it's going to interfere with the HDMI port. I had to basically carve out a little bit of the USB-C sort of angular side, if you like, so it would actually sit nice and actually plug in to the camera without the cage interfering too much. Now, I'm not very good at DIY and I do have a battle scar to show for it. I did actually cut myself, so I wouldn't recommend doing it if you're, you know, not well versed with a knife, I guess. And because of the multiple mounting holes on the top and the bottom of the Cine Rig base, it means that you won't have any issues adding other elements to your rig, like for example base plates for tripods or any other accessory you want to go ahead and screw on the top. Another really nice touch with the Cine Rig base is this little sort of felt cutout on the left hand side, which means you can go ahead and put your tilting LCD flush against the side of the body, which means that it won't be sticking out and you can still access your menu and your settings and all that sort of stuff without the base actually interfering with the operation. In order to start the power delivery from the V-mount base to your camera and your external monitor, there's a convenient little on-off switch on the side as well. So all you have to do is go ahead and flick that, and then on the DTAP port side there's also a little sort of display so you can see what is going on in terms of your output. Because of the EVF block on the top of the S5 II and the S5 IIX, it actually leaves a little bit of a gap sort of in between the Cine Rig base and the back of the camera, and that little space is actually very nice for hiding and tucking away your cables. One thing that I absolutely hate about camera rigs is cables being everywhere, so that little sort of recessed space behind the camera works really nicely to keep things looking nice and neat. So the version that I have for the S5 II and the S5 IIX will also fit the G9 II as well, and they do also make a version for the GH7 and the GH6 II. So if you're a Micro Four Thirds shooter, you can still go ahead and reap the benefits of a setup like this. So in terms of costings, the Rigid Pro Cine Rig base will set you back £240 here in the UK or $310 if you're in the US. And I'm going to caveat that because Rigid Pro are actually from Australia, which means that depending on what region you are in, there may be some import fees or costs. So if you're in the US, I believe that Australia and the US actually have some sort of agreement, so there wouldn't be any import duties to pay on shipping this item to you. However, in the UK, I had to pay approximately £80 in import duties to get this product to me. So, you know, sort of add that onto the final price and bear that in mind. That being said though, for a company in Australia, the shipping was actually super quick. So it does say on their site that you do get free worldwide delivery with DHL, and they quote 2 to 5 working days. And for some people that might seem quite far stretched considering it's coming from literally down under the other side of the planet for most people. But I actually had the order go through on a Thursday, and then Tuesday, which is today, was when it came. So literally, what is that? That's like 2 or 3 working days if you don't include the weekend, because the weekend isn't working days. So the shipping itself is actually very quick, and if you were someone that did want to get this rig, you wouldn't actually have to wait too long, despite the fact that it is from Australia. Now, I do also think that the Forte top handle that they sent out is also a fantastic choice with this whole setup, because it's a D-style sort of handle, which is always nice. It feels more robust in my opinion. It's got a bunch of different sort of cold shoes on the front and the back, and it's also even got a slot for a 15mm rod as well. So if you did want to go ahead and use some rod accessories with this handle, you can go ahead and do so. And then to do a quick whistle stop tour on the other parts of this rig that aren't from Rigid Pro, I have the Moment 99 V-mount batteries that I've always used. They're just really good and they're very compact. I've got the Atomos Ninja V. Again, it's a great monitor, pretty standard. I've got the Tilta Mirage VND matte box as well, which looks great and works fantastically as well because it's got your ND filter, and of course you can slide in your sort of bigger filters too. And then just because it looks pretty, I've also got the RX 30mm T1.5 mounted to this rig as well. But if I'm being honest, I would probably use the Lumix 24-70 f2.8 or another versatile zoom lens with a setup like this, so it is as versatile as possible. So the Rigid Pro Cine Rig base really does a great job at basically transforming your S5 II or your S5 IIX into a proper working Cine Rig. I mean, if you're using the S5 IIX as well with the Atomos Ninja V, then you can also output ProRes RAW, which is really nice, or just straight up ProRes if you don't need the RAW, as well as ProRes internally, of course. So it really does become a very powerful package. And in fact, if you are interested in finding out a little bit more about the ProRes RAW workflow with your Lumix camera, then check out this video next.